And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba, and welcome. Welcome to another round of the Conscious Roster Report here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. My name is Kedia Wadu, aka the Conscious Roster. Weekday mornings, you and I get together live. We come at you from 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's 12 noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. GMT, and 8 p.m. East Africa time. We get together with you and we deal with culture, consciousness, historical perspectives, entertainment, economics, education, health, labor, law, politics, religion, family, conflict, future studies, all areas of human interactivity and development. Today's date is Wednesday. It is the 18th of December, the year 2024 in the Western calendar corresponds to the year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, the oldest accurate solar calendar to which we have realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the 7th millennium. Welcome to the 63rd century. You have found your family in a peaceful place on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. Let me give you today's program. I hope you find this to be very informative history lesson. I am writing the book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6. And let me tell you, as I go to complete the book, the more and more information opens up that I insist needs to be in the book. I don't want to push the book back from its December 2024 release. I wanted to get 2 books into the marketplace during this calendar year. I did 10 last year. But I do want the book to be conclusive, accurate, and groundbreaking. Here's what we have on today's chapter, on today's study. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, History, and the Middle East Catastrophe. Today on LIB Radio, we consider the terrible fate that the Syrian nation has descended to in the past decade. Using a forensic method of examining history, scientific futurism allows us to comprehend complex forces in operation around the world. Very few of us have connected the downfall of the Syrian government to a secret agreement between Britain and France in 1916 to divide up the Ottoman Empire for their colonial enterprises. Artificially created borders and intentional ethnic rivalries led to the destabilization of the entire region and seemingly never-ending wars and civil conflict across this largely Islamic region. This is the real roots of World War IV. So that is the conversation for today. It's going to be impactful. It's going to be powerful. It may even upset a few people's sensibilities. Yet we are required to tell the truth to the very best of our abilities here on LIB Radio. We are required to tell the truth. And that is what I am committed to. So here we are. Let's get this party started. And I just want to real quickly do one quick save, and I welcome all of you on our various listening platforms. Let's go into this, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. We asked of the AI search engines, and they responded pretty well. Brave, in response to the question, what was the Sykes-Picot Agreement and its impact, its influence into modern day Western Asian politics? Brave returned and said the Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret treaty between Britain and France, signed on May 9, 1916, during World War I. The agreement divided the Arab provinces of the Ottoman Empire into spheres of influence and control, with the intention of carving out territories for British and French colonial expansion after the war. The Ottoman Empire, which had been in decline since the late 19th century, was a major power in the Middle East and controlled, and at that time it wasn't called the Middle East, it was called Oriental Asia, in the Orient. So it was a major power in the Orient and controlled a vast territory that stretched from Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey, to the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant, which is modern day Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, parts of Israel, Iraq, Palestine. The Sykes-Picot Agreement divided the Ottoman Empire's territories into British and French spheres of influence, with little regard for existing borders or ethnic divisions. Assigned territories to each power included British control over Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq, Palestine, and parts of Syria and Jordan. French control over Syria, Lebanon, and parts of Iraq and Jordan. It ignored aspirations of Arab nationalism, independence, which was emerging as a force during the war, and instead sought to impose colonial control over the region. It led to the eventual partitioning of the Ottoman Empire, with the British and French establishing mandates over various territories, including Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. And last point, the Sykes-Picot Agreement had significant consequences. It contributed to the fragmentation of Western Asia, the so-called Middle East, creating artificial borders and fueling tensions between newly created states. It undermined Arab nationalist aspirations for self-determination and unity, leading to ongoing conflicts and disputes across the region. It set the stage for the British Mandate in Palestine, which ultimately led to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Balfour Declaration. We've talked about that of recent, and that becomes a very, very key point in destabilizing Western Asia, a destabilization that continues to date. So again, it led to the creation of the State of Israel and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Israel, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, Israel, Jordan, Israel, Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iran, Israel, Yemen. That is destabilization. That is World War IV. It set the stage. I read that. It reinforced European colonial dominance in the so-called Middle East, perpetuating a legacy of Western intervention and influence across the region. In summary, the Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret treaty between Britain and France that divided the Ottoman Empire's Arab territories into spheres of influence, ignoring Arab nationalism and setting the stage for the region's modern day conflicts and divisions. So when you listen to the news coverage about the destabilization of Syria, as it is unfortunately descending on the same downward trajectory towards what's called a failed nation that happened to Libya in the aftermath of the assassination of Muammar Gaddafi. When we listen to Western news coverage of it now, my hope is that the information that we will get today will allow us to keep in mind, you broke it. You got to take responsibility for fixing it. Western hegemony, Western colonialism, Western nationalism, American and French and British and German and Italian and Dutch and Spanish and Roman Italy, empire aspirations have set the world on a chaotic course that now is approaching ever closer to nuclear exchange. If there is to be a nuclear exchange, my bet is it will emerge out of these lingering colonial conflicts, this terror visited upon Western Asia. Duck, duck, go. I asked the same question. What was the Sykes-Picot Agreement, and how is it related to modern news stories and conflicts across Western Asia? DuckDuckGo returned the following. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, signed in 1916 during World War I, was a secret arrangement between the United Kingdom and France, with the assent of Russia, to divide the Ottoman Empire's territories in the Middle East after the war. The agreement aimed to establish spheres of influence and control over the regions that were then part of the Ottoman Empire, particularly in modern-day Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. The relationship between the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the Ottoman Empire is significant for several reasons. Number one, dismantling the empire. The agreement marked a pivotal moment in the decline of the Ottoman Empire. As the empire was losing territory and power during World War I, the Sykes-Picot Agreement laid the groundwork for its eventual disintegration. Two, colonial interests. The agreement reflected the colonial ambitions of European powers in the region. The Ottoman Empire had been a major power in the Middle East for centuries, and the agreement signified the intent of Britain and France to carve up its territories for their own strategic and economic interests. Point three, the impact on nationalism. The Sykes-Picot Agreement is often cited as a contributing factor to the rise of nationalist movements across the Middle East. The arbitrary borders drawn by the agreement did not take into account the ethnic, religious, and cultural divisions in the region, leading to tensions and conflicts that persist. I would say they escalate to this day. And point four, post-war mandates. Following the end of World War I and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the League of Nations established mandates in the region, which were largely based on the Sykes-Picot Agreement. This further solidified the division of the Ottoman territories and the influence of European powers across Western Asia. In summary, the Sykes-Picot Agreement played a crucial role in the transformation of the Middle East following the decline of the Ottoman Empire, influencing geopolitical dynamics and contributing to ongoing conflicts in the region. And in this chapter of the book, the chapter is World War V, the Global War Against Islam. In this chapter of the book, we break down further the rise of these nationalists and ethnic militias, these warlords. There have been so many of them. And when we look behind the curtain is who is creating ISIS? Who created ISIS? The West created ISIS. Who created the Taliban? The West created the Taliban. And we look at who is arming them, who is profiting from endless wars and conflict. And then after the conflicts, the rebuilding, who is profiting from that? General Smedley Butler, was famous for his book and his quote, "War is a racket. It's an economic racket." Unfortunately, this racket has now put all of humanity in peril of rapid extinction from nuclear engagement. That's where we're at, people. Can we get beyond that? Theoretically, yes. Theoretically, yes. But we're going to have to remove these racketeers, these profiteers, these warmongering parties. We're going to have to remove them from power. They're not going to want to give up power without a big fight. We can see right now the public is at war with the healthcare insurance industries. And the recent assassination, I believe it was on December 3rd, of United Healthcare CEO Mark Thompson, appears to be, in some people's minds, a major escalation of the war between the corporations and the workers' middle class. That's World War V, according to my analysis. Going forward, we are today looking at the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the de-evolution of Western Asian societies. Ecosia, I asked the same question about Sykes-Picot. I had never heard of it until just yesterday. Once I heard about it, I thought it was a fascinating and very revealing point of understanding the inner affairs that are happening across the region. I welcome you. Alter Ego is in the house. Always great to have you with us on today's Conscious Rasa Report. Ecosia returned the following. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, signed in 1916 between the United Kingdom and France, was a secret arrangement that aimed to divide the Ottoman Empire's territories in the Middle East into zones of influence after World War I. The agreement came about during a time when the Ottoman Empire was in decline and was being challenged by various nationalist movements. Under the Sykes-Picot Agreement, the regions of the Middle East were divided into areas that would be controlled or influenced by British and the French. This division disregarded the ethnic, tribal, and religious complexities of the region, leading to long-lasting tensions and conflicts. The agreement was particularly significant because it laid the groundwork for the modern borders of many Middle Eastern countries. The Ottoman Empire had ruled much of the Middle East for centuries, but its defeat in World War I led to its disintegration. The Sykes-Picot Agreement played a crucial role in reshaping the political landscape of the region, contributing to the emergence of new nation states and influencing various nationalist movements, including Zionism, which sought to establish a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The ramifications of the Sykes-Picot Agreement are still felt today, as many of the borders and political divisions established at that time have contributed to ongoing conflicts and tensions in the Middle East. One more response I got from Copilot. I know this is a bit redundant, but being redundant, we get a chance to reinforce critical points, including the Ecosia search was the first one that inserted the idea of Zionism into this conversation. Oh, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to how the Sykes-Picot Agreement led to the rise of the al-Assad family as head of the Ba'athist party that dominated Syria from its independence in 1946. We're going to be talking about all of that. This book, Disaster Preparedness, really focuses on what you and I do today to prepare for World Wars V, which is ongoing, World War VI, which is ramping up, to its most hostile phase. And least we should not be aware. World War II is attributed to the deaths of some 60 million people or more around the world. World War III contributed to the deaths of, at least, according to my counts in the book, at least 21 million people died because of World War III. World War IV, probably around 20 million or more. I do tally these numbers up in the book. World War IV is ongoing. World War V, it's hard to judge how many people died. I would put the COVID-19 casualties, many of them, not all of them, I would put many of them, especially those who were put into ventilator therapies, as well as these antiviral therapies, I would put those as casualties of World War V. And World War VI is now ramping up. And it's hard to put casualty figures on that because it's hard to separate World War VI from World Wars III, IV. Co-pilot. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret treaty signed in 1916 between the United Kingdom and France with assent from Russia to divide the Ottoman Empire's territories in the Middle East in the event of an Allied victory in World War I. The agreement aimed to define their respective spheres of influence and control in the region. The relationship between the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the Ottoman Empire is that the agreement essentially planned for the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire's territories, anticipating its collapse. The agreement divided the Ottoman provinces outside the Arabian Peninsula into areas of French and British control and influence. This division laid the groundwork for the modern borders of countries in the Middle East, such as Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. I asked this question of various search engines. I also went to Wikipedia. Wikipedia, when it comes to historical record, is not so bad. When it comes to health and politics, Wikipedia is garbage. It's junk. I won't give them a dime. I asked the question, is there a connection between the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the rise of al-Assad regime? Co-pilot says, yes. There is a connection between the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the rise of the al-Assad regime in Syria. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, signed in 1916, divided the Ottoman Empire's territories in the Middle East between the British and the French without considering the ethnic and religious makeup of the region. This led to the creation of artificial borders that grouped together diverse and often conflicting communities. In Syria, the arbitrary borders drawn by the Sykes-Picot Agreement contributed to long-term instability and sectarian tensions. The al-Assad regime, led by Hafez al-Assad and later his son Bashar al-Assad, who has just been removed from office and gone into exile. The al-Assad regime capitalized on these divisions to maintain power. The regime often positioned itself as a stabilizing force against the sectarian strife, while also using authoritarian measures to suppress dissent. Based on this question, the rise of al-Assad family and Sykes-Picot, Brave says, based on the provided search results, there is no direct connection between the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the rise of the al-Assad regime. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was signed in 1916 while the al-Assad regime, led by Hafez al-Assad and later his son Bashar al-Assad, did not come to power until the 1970s. The Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret agreement, we read all of that, which did not directly affect the Syrian state or the al-Assad family, as Syria was not yet an independent country at that time. Syria was part of the Ottoman Empire and later became a French mandate territory under the League of Nations. Excuse me, I'm clearing my lungs today. The French mandate, the modern Syrian state, and the al-Assad regime were shaped by subsequent events, including, point one, the French mandate in Syria, 1920 to 1946, which created the modern Syrian state and established a French-backed government. Point two, the 1946 independence of Syria, which led to a series of military coups and power struggles. Point three, the Ba'athist coup in 1963, which brought Hafez al-Assad to power. Point four, the 1970 coup, which solidified Hafez al-Assad's control over the government. Point five, the 1982 Hama massacre, which cemented the al-Assad family's grip on power. Point six, the Sykes-Picot Agreement's legacy is more relevant to the broader regional context, including the creation of artificial borders, the suppression of Arab nationalist movements, and the enduring influence of colonial powers. However, there is no direct causal link between the agreement and the rise of the al-Assad regime. In summary, while the Sykes-Picot Agreement played a significant role in shaping the modern Middle East, its impact on the Syrian state and the al-Assad regime was indirect and occurred through a series of subsequent events and power struggles, which, according to what I interpret, and when we look at this series of coups d'etats and who's created these artificial rivalries by creating these borders, there's a direct connection. But the search engines, the AI search engines, and searching mostly through Western media and Western documents put out by the Western security agencies will almost always deny colonial impact, imperialist ambitions as the cause for much of this conflict we see across the region of Western Asia. You and I don't have to rely on others to define history. That's what scientific futurism allows us to do. We have the right, I say we have the responsibility to tell the story as the story is related to who we are as individuals belonging to groups. That's a part of culture. It's called historical perspective. I welcome your commentary. Would love to hear your thoughts. Is this relevant to you or is it irrelevant? I do see for Africa One checking in from UK, beloved sister. Hetep, Brother Kidi, and global LIB family. Hetep to you. We wish you peace, beloved. I want to continue because I found this stuff to be really, really fascinating. Now, I did have one link in here, and this link, I found the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Wikipedia had a listing for it. I thought I was reading from that, but I just had copied the link. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the link to this so you can look it up, even though, as you heard me say, I don't necessarily regard Wikipedia to be an ideal point of reference. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, and it did not come up. Let me just search for this one more time. Sykes, Sykes-Picot agreement. And let me just give you a few paragraphs of what Wikipedia says. The Sykes-Picot agreement was a 1916 secret treaty between the United Kingdom and France with assent from Russia and Italy to define their mutually agreed spheres of influence and control in an eventual partition of the Ottoman Empire. The agreement was based on the premise that the Triple Entente would achieve success in defeating the Ottoman Empire during World War I. The Triple Entente was the alliance between Britain, France, and Italy. This is before the United States enters the war. And formed a part of a series of secret agreements contemplating the partition of the empire, the Ottoman Empire. The primary negotiations leading to the agreement took place between the 23rd of November 1915 and January 3rd, 1916, on which the British and French diplomats Marc Sykes and François-Georges Picot initialed an agreement memorandum. The agreement was ratified by their respective governments on the 9th and the 16th of May, 1916. The agreement effectively divided the Ottoman provinces outside the Arabian Peninsula into areas of British and French control and influence. The British and French controlled countries were divided by the Sykes-Picot line. The agreement allocated to the UK control over what is today southern Israel and Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, and an additional small area that included the ports of Haifa and Acre. I think it looks like Acre, but I think it's Acre, to allow access to the Mediterranean. France was to control southeastern Turkey, the Kurdistan region, Syria, and Lebanon. As a result of the included Sazonov-Patyolog agreement, Russia was to get Western Armenia, in addition to Constantinople and the Turkish Straits, already promised under the 1915 Constantinople Agreement. Italy assented to the agreement in 1917 via the Agreement of Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne and received northern Anatolia, which is modern-day Turkey. The Palestine region, with a smaller area than the later mandatory Palestine, was to fall under an, unquote, international administration, unquote. That was because of the presence of the holy city of Jerusalem was put under international administration. The agreement was initially used directly as the basis for the 1918 Anglo-French modus vivendi, which provided a framework for the occupied enemy territory administration in the Levant. More broadly, it was to lead indirectly to the subsequent partitioning of the Ottoman Empire following Ottoman defeat in 1918. Shortly after the war, the French ceded Palestine and Mosul to the British. Mandates in the Levant and Mesopotamia were assigned at the April 1920 San Remo Conference following the Sykes-Picot framework. The British mandate for Palestine ran until 1948. The British mandate for Mesopotamia was to be replaced by a similar treaty with mandatory Iraq, and the French mandate for Syria and Lebanon lasted until 1946. The Anatolian parts of the agreement were signed by the August 1920 Treaty of Sèvres. However, these ambitions were thwarted by the 1919 to 1923 Turkish War of Independence and the subsequent Treaty of Lausanne. This agreement, we're talking about Sykes-Picot, is seen by many as a turning point in Western and Arab relations. It reneged upon the UK's promises to Arabs regarding a national Arab homeland in the area of the region of Syria in exchange for supporting the British against the Ottoman Empire. The agreement, along with others, was made public by the Bolsheviks in Moscow on the 23rd of November 1917 and repeated in the Manchester Guardian on 26th of November 1917, such that the British were embarrassed, the Arabs dismayed, and the Turks delighted. The Sykes-Picot Agreement legacy has led to much resentment in the region, among Arabs in particular, but also among Kurds who were denied an independent state. So it goes on much, talking about the history of the emergence of this Sykes-Picot Agreement. I encourage everybody out there, please do pay attention to this. I'm going to copy this link and share it across the various websites where today's broadcast is taking place. Sharing it on Facebook, sharing it on Rumble. And, history is maybe not everybody's cup of tea. Malcolm X did say, of all of our studies, history is most, I'm paraphrasing, of all our studies, history is most qualified to reward our research. John Henrik Clarke said that history is like a roadmap. It tells the people where they have been, where they are, but more importantly, where they can be expected to go. I completely agree. Marcus Garvey said that people without a knowledge of their history is like a tree with no roots. And if the they includes all of the people of planet Earth, then the people without a knowledge of these histories where perpetual conflict arises is like a tree with no roots that's caught in a constance of, cyclones, hurricanes. And we don't necessarily want to go out like that. So that's why we study history. Scientific futurism includes history studies as one of the 15 disciplines of scientific futurism. History is very, very important if we wish to forecast the future with any amount of accuracy. Going forward, the document I put together, still quite a bit of research on this. We are talking at this particular point, we got through that one. We talked about the connection to the rise of the al-Assad family. And it takes us to a part of this article, which appeared December 10 in The Hill, written by Joseph. It's entitled Syria and Assad's Fall. It's really all about colonialism. Let's read part of that article. Excuse me. Let's read part of that article and see if we can gain some insights here and see what's happening today in context. Syria and Assad's fall. It's really all about colonialism. In the cinematic masterpiece, Lawrence of Arabia, there is a famous scene in which, after the Arab rebels beat the British to Damascus, they proceed to have their alliance fall apart as they fight each other on how to run the city. The British then swoop in and make a deal with Faisal, making him king, but effectively keeping control of the region themselves. The movie also references the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was the British Empire dividing the Middle East with the French. What does that have to do with today? Well, everything. As Bashar al-Assad fled to Moscow, an uneasy rumbling is spreading throughout the Middle East and the world. Will Syria survive as a country? Or will the artificial borders created over 100 years ago by the British and French lead to another regional war that will end up with another Assad type in control as a strongman. By drawing lines on a map that benefited Western powers only, the countries that later became Syria, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, etc., were meant not to be stable, but to allow colonial powers to retain control. Let's look at an ethnic map of Syria. The Alawites, Sunni Muslims, and Kurds were all forced into countries whose boundaries benefit none of them. In Iraq, it is no different, with the Sunni, Shia, and Kurds who were also forced into sharing a country. It is no wonder we saw a civil war break out there after the US invasion. Syria had its own civil war starting in 2011. Lebanon had its war in the 1980s and has had a tenuous peace ever since. Yemen's Houthis rebelled. The Kurds have been fighting the Turks and Iraqis for a state of their own. And let us not even get started on Israel and Palestine. What we have seen is since the Sykes-Picot agreement, countries in the Middle East have only found stability in the arms of an autocratic strongman. The Assad dynasty in Syria, Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the Saudi royal family, and others have maintained control through the most undemocratic means. These artificial borders are not just limited to the Middle East. In the scramble for Africa, European imperial powers divided an entire continent based on what benefited them, not the actual people living there. The result? The same as in the Middle East. Strongmen like Idi Amin or Robert Mugabe, civil wars like in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, religious violence like in Somalia and Kenya, and worst of all, genocides like in Rwanda. When ISIS began its frightening lightning spread across the Levant, one of its goals was the destruction of the borders created by the Sykes-Picot Agreement. This is pretty important because as the dust settles on Assad regime ending, various groups will now have different ideas on how the Middle East should be set up. Islamists might look to create another ISIS-like caliphate with a goal of expansion, or just an Islamic theocracy in Syria. The Kurds might make a move to finally get their own territory, which would trigger a war with Turkey. The Christians in Syria might flee a home they have had lived in for thousands of years, now that they have lost the protection of the Assad government. Iran, which is an ally of Assad, might try to salvage its influence by offering arms and money to different sects. Israel will surely move to annex more of the Golan Heights, and the Saudis, Iraqis, and Jordanians will look on with anxiety as they hope the fallout doesn't affect their countries. This is pretty serious stuff, people. We have to understand this in the context of which it is being shared. And these ideas of perpetual warfare, can we get beyond that? Can we get beyond that? I'm going to return just briefly to, and let me see how much time we spend on this, because I have a suspicion that my audience is not necessarily highly motivated by the discussion today. I find it fascinating. A few of you are out there. I see a couple people have hit the like button. I am broadcasting today's broadcast on YouTube. We are up on Rumble. Nobody has hit the like button. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on today's broadcast. There's much more to this. And again, this goes in context of the book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6. Should we be preparing for a disaster of world wars? Let's look at the conflict migration. Just real quickly, I want to ask this question and get an answer. What is the state? And I'm going to go to Brave to begin this search. Brave usually does a pretty good job of giving me what I'm looking for. What is the current state of a conflict-driven migration in this would be the third decade of the 21st century. List the worst migrations. List the worst incidences. Let's say that. So I'm going to copy that in case I want to make the inquiry. And a second one. What is the current state of conflict-driven migration in the third decade of the 21st century? Here's what Brave has to say. Conflict-driven migration, 21st century. Current state of conflict-driven migration. The current state of conflict-driven migration in the third decade of the 21st century is characterized by a significant increase in the number of forcibly displaced people, with over 117.3 million people displaced at the end of 2023. I'll repeat, with over 117.3 million displaced people at the end of 2023. This number has more than tripled in the last decade, with 1 in every 69 people, or 1.5% of the entire world's population, being forcibly displaced. The largest proportion of refugees globally are from Afghanistan and Syria, with 6.4 million each, and together equivalent to 1/3 of all refugees under the UN High Commission for Refugees mandate. Worst instances. Some of the worst instances of conflict-driven migration include, point, the conflict in Sudan, which broke out in April 2023, causing one of the largest humanitarian and displacement crises in the world. 2, the conflict in Ukraine, which has led to a significant increase in refugees and internally displaced persons. Point 3, the conflicts in the Middle East, particularly in Syria and Afghanistan, which have resulted in a large number of refugees and internally displaced persons. Point 4, the central Mediterranean route, where refugees and migrants face severe risks, including severe threats to life, rape, torture, kidnapping, arbitrary detention, robbery, and human trafficking. Point 5, the Sahara Desert, where 950 people are known to have died while crossing between 2021 and 2023, and the Mediterranean Sea, where 7,600 people on the move died or went missing between 2021 and 2023. We're talking about what is the current state of conflict-driven migration across this region. And I think that that was a pretty reasonable response. Let me just copy, cut, and paste that one to today's document, paste that on the end. And I'm going to do one more search. I usually will do 4 of these, and then take the time to combine them But I'm going to do one more search on this one. This time I'm going to use Microsoft's Copilot. The reason I like Microsoft Copilot is because it will often include reference links to where it got the information. And I personally find those to be useful. We're asking the question, as to the state of conflict-driven migration in the third decade of the 20th century. Lists the worst incidences. And here's what Copilot has to share. Conflict-driven migration has reached unprecedented levels in the third decade of the 21st century. As of late 2024, over 123 million people are displaced due to conflict, violence, persecution, and human rights abuses. This figure includes both refugees and internally displaced persons. The Brave research came up with a figure of 117.3 million, but according to Copilot, 123 million. And again, they do list the references. The worst instances of conflict-driven migration, number one on the list, Sudan. The conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces has displaced 9.1 million people. Number two, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Ongoing clashes with various non-state armed groups have led to the displacement of 3.7 million people. Number three, Burkina Faso. The country has seen a 61% increase in displacement since 2022, with 707,000 people displaced. Number four, Chad and Niger. Conflicts surrounding the Lake Chad Basin have resulted in 118,000 refugee movements in Chad, and 181,000 in Niger. And number five on this list, Middle East. The escalation in Palestine and Israel has caused 4.1 million movements, with the Gaza Strip being the focal point. These numbers highlight the urgent need for international cooperation and effective solutions to address the humanitarian crises caused by conflict-driven migration. And that is some very serious information. And let me just copy, cut, and paste that as well into my research document. Now, from this research document, I'll go through and kind of consolidate these ideas. There were several central ideas that were in today's report. Number one, revelation of the secret agreement, the secret treaty between the British and the French, which also brought in the Russians and Italians to divide up the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I. Another critical point was the arbitrary nature of drawing these borders. These borders were drawn deliberately to break up large and powerful groups into different nations. They were drawn without regard to the current of the ethnic balances that existed in these nations. Many times for thousands of years, you had Sephardic Jews, you had Christians living in those regions for a long, long time in what had become peaceful coexistence. Of course, realizing that the beginning of those relationships probably were related to the Crusades. You have the colonial enterprises of the British and the French. These borders drawings and these political affairs were more about preserving and expanding colonial enterprises than they were about the best self-interest of the peoples inhabiting the region. A number of critical elements also were a part of this. I need to 1 second. I'm going to break off the microphone. Don't you go nowhere. It should take me 12 seconds. Real quickly, be right back. All right, sorry about that. Had to blow my nose and open a box of Kleenex to do so. I don't know if they're Kleenex. A box of napkins, face wipes. No, you call them Kleenex, but I don't like using brand names for generic products. So tissues to blow my nose. And it was a good blow too. I am having the most wonderful time. Today is day 18 of a 56-day stem cell protocol. And let me tell you, it feels good. Yesterday I got out and I did yard work and I had to cut some bushes back. The railing between the house and the lake, which is right behind the house, had these bushes growing through it. And the HOA did not appreciate that. And we do not like battling with the HOA. So I got out there and to trim these bushes back from the fence, only to find out that the biggest bush that was offending the offender here was thorns. Oh, these thorns were nasty. So I found my tools in the garage and was out there cutting it back and cutting it back and did a pretty good job of trimming it back. And there's one more. There were three total of three incursions, and one more I got to take care of later today. But that was a lot of physical work, though. So I didn't get all my push-ups in yesterday. I was able to get in 2 sets of 100, which on a normal day, if I hadn't done all that hard yard work, on a normal day, 100 push-ups to me is like, come on, man. I'm serious. 100 push-ups, only one set, is like, come on, man. You didn't try. But I did a lot of physical work. And then when I weighed myself today, I did have a 1 pound reduction from the day before. So that's a measure of the physicality of the work. Right now, again, 56-day stem cell rejuvenation. I'm just going to change directions right now because we are doing fundraising all this month of December. And the story, come on, somebody tell me. The history that we share today of the secret agreement, Sykes-Picot agreement in 1916, May 9th, it was signed between France and Britain to divide up the Ottoman Empire, with Italy and the Russians acquiescing to it and taking a little piece of that as well. This was a good history lesson today. Wherever, who has told that history to you this month? Now that we see the Syrian crisis is headline news every day, who has brought up the secret agreement between the French and the British, which started all this mess? It didn't start it all. The collapse of the Ottoman Empire began, but the Ottoman Empire joined the wrong team during the First World War, the Great War, which was the war between empires. The Ottoman Empire should have stayed out of that war, but they didn't, because they had old rivalries. The Ottoman Empire had bucked up against Austro-Hungarian Empire, had bucked up against the Italians and the Prussians and all of them as it tried to conquer Europe during the middle part of the 19th century. And now it was in decline. The largely Islamic Ottoman Empire should have stayed out of that war, but they didn't. Maybe they couldn't because of the ambitions of British and French colonialism. So this type of historical perspective, in my opinion, is incredibly important. Not very many of you agree with that. And I know that is a fact. Not very. I got a chance to be on a group talk yesterday, and I spoke to the group about the 3 books coming out, one of which I don't have it in my hand, but it's out now. And people are buying it. I'm waiting for my shipment of the books to arrive. They're going to arrive before Christmas, so I'm going to get those in the mail as fast as I can. Oh, I hate going to the post office during Christmas season, but hey, just be patient. So I'm going to get this group of books shipped out as soon as my shipment comes in. And in the meantime, I was talking to this group about the 3 books. And when I got to the middle book, Disaster Preparedness for World Wars 5 and 6, I thought that the group, would be really interested in it. They fell asleep. In fact, in the aftermath, as the Q&A period went on, I kind of felt bad and sad because I had just spent about 30 minutes laying out the premise of three very important books that I'm writing, and it went over everybody's head. And the host of the program, bless her soul, bless her heart, she's a good person, a very caring person, but she didn't get it at all. She didn't get it at all. And the way the Q&A kind of opened up, and with her leading it, it appeared to me like, Keita, your research is just too complicated for some people. Not for everyone. Some of you do get it. And some of you understand why. We have to have an outlet like LIB Radio. We have to have this. Otherwise, as a people, and this is really kind of the problem with the conversation, as a people, we're constantly going to be left behind because we just don't seem to get it. And that is very sad, but it's a reality. So therefore, we have the People's Academy, LIB Radio, the People's Academy. And I'm looking at the numbers right now, and today's show, which is on the history of the so-called Middle East, Western Asia, the colonial legacy, and it even brought us up to date to what is happening this week in the news, today, tomorrow in the news, and leads us now from a position of scientific futurism to understand I am not going to be surprised with a further disintegration of the Syrian state into these various competing nationalist camps, which divide and conquer means NATO, the West, the French, the British, the Americans, the Israelis will continue to assert their covert manipulation of the region to keep the Islamist participants of these nations battling each other. I'm not going to be surprised. Why? Because of today's study. It's not the first study we've done. It's the third study we've done about the disintegration of Syria. And the fact, according to my analysis, we're looking to what's going to happen to Syria. Just look at Libya since 1911, since 2011. Look at Libya, and you will see almost the exact same trajectory of Syria, which includes the exporting of violence outside of Syria's borders. So we now see that it happened in Libya, with much of the jihadists now moving south and disrupting Chad, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, disrupting parts of Nigeria, disrupting Western Egypt. That's what happened with the dismantling of Muammar Gaddafi. So what happens with the dismantling of the al-Assad regime, the strongman holding Syria together? It's going to factionalize. The Kurds are going to grab part of it. The Turks are going to grab part of it. The French will be financing the chaos and turmoil and selling weapons. The Americans will be financing the chaos and selling weapons and giving away weapons. The British, everything America does, its little cousin, the British, do as well. Meanwhile, who's going to go nuclear to defend themselves from all of this? Will Iran be forced to develop nuclear weapons to defend itself? It appears yes, that's the answer. Will any other states in that region be forced to go nuclear? Could very well likely Egypt. Or Egypt might just turn out to be a little kind of lump just sitting there waiting for somebody to come and spank it. And hopefully after the spanking, they'll be allowed to continue to exist. But Egypt is in the pathway of greater Israel. That was yesterday's report. This ideal Zionist, this optimal Zionist fantasy Greater Israel. Unfortunately, that captures the Nigerian Delta or the Egyptian Delta. That captures the Giza Plateau and captures Cairo. So this is a mess. That's why we need to have our voice. That's why I'm asking you, our listening audience, to contribute, to help out. We had one new subscriber come in yesterday and he said, hey, I have to do my part. So he signed up for a $10 monthly donation subscription. You can be a regular contributor to our fund drive if you scroll to the bottom of libradio.com. You'll see a link where you can share a single payment, a single donation of any amount that you choose. Or you can sign up for a subscription, which takes an amount out of your debit card or credit card, checking account, however you choose to set it up, for just a small amount every month. A $10 a month from 20 people allows me to pay bills associated with the broadcast, which is about $200 a month, just associated with just the broadcast. That's without me getting paid to do the show. If I can sell books because of the show, and my books are very relevant to the topics that we choose for the broadcast, if I can sell books, then all of that's great. If I don't sell the books, then I have to hustle in another aspect of my life, including doing our various classes. We're about to, this Saturday, the 21st of December, about to launch another class. This is our quarterly seasonal detoxification fast. I had a conversation with two people yesterday, and both of them absolutely positively needed a detox. One, bless your heart, beloved. She doesn't know how sick she is. She passes out and wakes up in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. Her husband is freaking out because he's watched his wife go into not just passing out, convulsions. And that's to put her in a hospital, in an ambulance, and send her to the hospital. You know how much an ambulance costs nowadays? An ambulance ride to the hospital costs more than the class that I teach to keep you out of the ambulance. I talked to two people yesterday, one of whom was talking about her daughter, and the other one talking about herself and her husband, who need to do the detox fast. You need to have 21 days where you reset your habits, reset your body, activate the body's self-healing mechanisms, apoptosis and stem cell activation. But people are still choosing to ignore disease prevention and just accept whatever happens. If I happen to go to the hospital, everybody, please pray for me. Pray for sister or brother's recovery. Pray for my wife. Pray for my husband who's caught up in the matrix of the medical pharmaceutical drug complex, who, according to my opinion, doesn't know what the it's doing. The allopathic medicine complex today, to me, is outrageously broken. But how many of us know that? How many of us can testify to that? It's really confusing to me why people won't try harder. But that appears to be what is going on. So we're asking that you, and you, our listening audience, join with us. Let's create a winning team, you and me, working together, us, aligned to keep ourselves healthy first, all around us. Let's keep those as healthy as possible. Let's save the money that we had been spending on a healthcare system that's gone buck wild out of control. Let's save that money and use that money to develop ourselves. Use that money to build coochie chuggalia villages, to build families, to invest. Let's use the money we have been spending trying to keep the family from going bankrupt from medical expenses. Let's save that money. I don't buy health insurance. So this situation that is brewed now with the public revolting and cheering the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Mark Thompson, people cheering his assassination, say they don't feel sorry for nobody who makes money when their company denies one out of every three claims for healthcare insurance. United Healthcare denies them. That compares to the best company, which denies only 6 to 7%. United Healthcare denies 32%. And while the number of denials has increased exponentially under Mark Thompson's reign as CEO, and he catches 2 bullets to the back or to the head, assassinated on the streets of Manhattan. And it surprised me that many people are cheering that. You go across YouTube and you look at it now, that has turned into the people's rebellion against the insurance companies. Never are you ever going to hear us advocating murder and assassination. We're just the opposite. We say, stop the murder, stop the assassination. Everybody chill, everybody freeze. Let's fix the systems by which the resources that build a nation belong to the people who did the building, not to this damn billionaire class of blood-sucking vultures and leeches, of which many people have determined Mark Thompson represented that billionaire class of blood-sucking leeches. Disaster preparedness for World Wars V and VI. That incident goes into chapter on World War V. The people's, the workers, middle class versus the globalists, controllers who want everything for themselves. They want it all. And they are ruthless, absolutely ruthless. As creative and outside the box as Elon Musk is, he still belongs to the class of blood-sucking vulture vampire leeches. It's going to get crazy, y'all. It's already gotten crazy. This is the time of the year when they don't want it to get too crazy because they want everybody to think it's normal, the economy's great, go shopping. Shop, 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 shop. And then a week or two after the shopping season has crested, they'll talk about how disappointed the shopping season was and how many businesses are failing this year because you didn't shop enough. No, you did shop too much. The businesses are failing because the blood-sucking vampire class is eating them. And so I'm ranting, I'm raving. That's who we are. We have a right to disagree. I suggest we have a responsibility to disagree if everything out there that we're disagreeing with is so fundamentally unfair. We have a responsibility to disagree. Share a little love, people. Have a little hope. Let's make this world a little better. Try a little more, harder than before. So sang Aswad. We can do it. We can make the world a better place to live. But we got to try. We have to try. We have to put some accuracy into it. We have to be insightful. More of us are going to have to put in real work. I do see my dear brother Jamal from Inner Light Radio checking in. This topic is on point, as it seems like there is an agenda to, quote, mow the lawn again in 2025. And this was a post, or this was his response to a post. We did a program a couple of days ago It's about population control. I think that was Monday's program. It's about population control. And let me just respond to my brother. Yes, yes, you and I have focused on this subject for what? About 30 plus years. Yes, yes, yes. Brother Nefertim in the house. Mr. Wadu, greetings from East Asia. Excellent topic. I will watch on Rumble later today, Crest. And speaking of Crest, we are just a few days away from the winter solstice. We are doing a winter solstice class, 21-day winter solstice detoxification. Are you interested? Are you interested in optimizing your hydration during a fasting detox, learning how to do a 24-hour intermittent or 72-hour water fast? Do you want to know about the immense benefits of seasonal detoxification? Why I do it 4 times a year and been doing it 4 times a year for over 20 years now. How to best learn how to initiate a successful 21-day detox. A lot of people don't know how to get it started, so they procrastinate day after day after day after day until finally 7 days into the detox fast, and you haven't even started yet. That was a problem we had with one of our last classes. The people just wouldn't start. They would every day have another excuse. Oh, Kitty, well, I was waiting for you to do this. I was waiting for you to do that. But in the WhatsApp group where we attend every day, you can see there's a bunch of us and we're already doing it. But you got every excuse possible. It's not about what I'm not sharing. It's about your psychology. You're not a self-starter. Your willpower has been subjected to the convenience of the fast food you eat, the junk food, the crunchy crunchies you just can't live with, the sugar. Oh, I have a sweet tooth. Come on, people. And then you're going to call me later when you get a chronic disease diagnosis. I hope you call me. I would rather help you prevent that chronic disease. But if you don't listen to and adhere to and follow the prevention program, and the chronic disease diagnosis comes, I hope you will at least call me to say and ask sincerely, what do I do? I've been diagnosed as high cholesterol. They want to put me on statin drugs. What do I do? I'm overweight, obese. Many times people won't even admit that until I tell them that. They'll say, well, I have this problem. I have a autoimmune disorder. I have allergies. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. I have endometriosis. They want to do a hysterectomy on me. I'm having these symptoms of menopause. I'm having swollen prostate issues. I took the prostate specific antigen test, and now they're telling me I have prostate cancer, and they want to put me on these drugs that will neutralize my manhood. That's where people are right now. That's where people are. Brother Jamal, it's about population war. So we're asking that you do something. Join the upcoming detox. It begins winter solstice is Saturday, December 21st. The Detox, Reboot, and Rejuvenate 21-day program. You can do it with 2 payments of $89 a piece. Let me put up this link so those of you can have access to it. And You can do whatever you will to do. The thing about it is you got to do something. You got to do something. And if you don't do anything, what do you expect the world to reward you with? Do you expect to be rewarded with longevity if you never invest in longevity? If you never invest in vitality and weight control, do you expect to be rewarded with vitality and an optimized weight? Or do you just take what you can get? Doesn't matter whether or not you need what you get. You just take it anyway. That's sad, people. I think I understand what you're going through, but I'm not necessarily empathetic with it because we all have so many options, so many choices. And as we're living in an era where mass communications and travel and research, access to scientific peer review articles and journals is best access to information that we could use, to me, it's just sad. It's just very sad that people are in such a broken down state. It's like what they call it, adolescence. It's like we just didn't grow up to be fully autonomous, self-thinking, self-regulating adults. Prolonged adolescence. Grown-ups. I'm talking to women who are emerging their childbearing age years who still haven't figured out what is the nature of women bearing children. Yeah, they know it has to do with sex, but they don't know that it has to do with culture. They don't know that it has something to do with legacy. They don't know that it has something to do with bloodline. They don't know that having 2+ babies is a radical political position opposing the global population control regimen. For many women now, having one baby, they say, hey, I had my baby. Had this conversation recently with someone. They say, but you know, you're forcing your one child to have to bury both parents. That's too much for one child to have to deal with. That's too much. I hear from women all the time. After my mother died, my world fell apart and I gained weight. Gained all this weight after my mother died. Hey, listen, the relationship between a girl and her mother has to be the most precious relationship in the world. I lost my mother at a very young age, but at least I had 4 brothers, a father, and a grandfather to share that grief with. We can do better than what we're doing, people. That's the one point I'm saying. But we have to do something. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up for right now because it don't seem to be motivating any of you right now. I'm really kind of disappointed. I don't seem to be motivating anyone to invest in us, to do better. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm certainly not going to give up on the mission. The mission is bigger than me. The mission is a mission of generations. I am an elder now. Now, I, as an elder, have to take responsibility for the preservation of the group, for the preservation of the planet, for the preservation of nature that supports life, nature that supports thriving, living being. I have to take responsibility for the decisions that bring integrity or disintegration to the generations to follow. We're talking about the millennials. Generation X, you guys are already in your middle ages now. You're grown adults, you're responsible, even though Generation X made a lot of very serious mistakes. The millennials, your children, or actually our children, my children's generation are the millennials. And they are making some very, very big mistakes. And I have to take responsibility. We have to take responsibility. And now you have Gen Zs. And the Gen Zs are coming into their childbearing age years. And the Gen Zs are all messed up. Yeah, they are. They're all messed up. Can we do better than this? Yeah, why not? You've been tuned into your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. We are LIB Radio, LIB TV. We are livinginblack.com. I'm going to wish you all peace and prosperity to each and every one of you. You've been tuned into LIB Radio, LIB TV, livinginblack.com. Do go to LIB Radio right now. Right now. Don't delay even a minute. And scroll down to the bottom of the front page. Make a contribution. Many are called, but few will heed the call. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you on LIB Radio.